This is Saturn Girl. Like this video and subscribe to my channel. Comment below because I want to know what you think. And it helps me out with the algorithm. Also, do me a favor and click the bell when you subscribe so that you get notified when my new videos drop. And my videos are the best. Well, what's cracking? On December the 21st, we enter that time of year when the sun descends to its lowest point on its arc during the cycle of a year. In other words, happy winter solstice! Yay! Say, what is a solstice anyway? Well, I'm glad you asked. You see, the word solstice comes from the Latin sol, meaning sun, and stitios, meaning to stand still. So very literally, it means sun stands still. Why would they call it that? Well, because the sun moves neither up nor down on its arc, you see, for 3 days. In fact, ancient peoples used to say, the sun stands still for 3 days. Right? Sounds very epic and very ominous, right? Well, my Christian friends may be reminded of the popular phrase, on the 3rd day he rose again, right? In fulfillment of the scriptures. I'm sorry, I was raised very Catholic, so, I quote scripture like Satan. Sorry. So, remember, the sun would rise and set the same way. It did not move neither up nor down on its arc. It appeared as if it stayed stationary, you see. Now, the winter solstice is a time for celebration. But why? Well, you see, because it's after this darkest hour, after the sun has reached its lowest point, that the light begins to increase again as the sun begins to move northwards, yes, towards its zenith at the summer solstice, the meridian. So, and the cycle begins anew. Now, we know that the sun isn't moving relative to the earth, don't we? Rather, it's the earth's tilt on its axis as it orbits the sun that creates this phenomenon of seasons. Yeah. So, during the winter solstice, the earth's axis, the earth's north pole is tilted away from the sun. Whereas during the summer solstice, it's tilted towards, you see? No. And the winter solstice happens as the sun enters the sign of Capricorn. But why? Well, let's quickly take a look at this fun chart, shall we? Okay, look, there's the sun in Sagittarius. Let's go forward, 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 forward. Boom! The solstice. Well, you see, this says December 22nd, but he went in on the 21st. I think it's at 10 p.m. my time over here in the Midwest. So, but anyway, why does that matter? Well, because in tropical astrology, as opposed to sidereal, we fix the solstices and equinoxes to the cardinal signs. That means Aries is always at the vernal or spring equinox. Cancer, always at the summer solstice, yes? Libra, always at the autumnal or fall equinox. And Capricorn, always at the winter solstice, yeah? So if you follow me, you probably know that the signs primarily get their meanings from 2 places. Number 1, the planets that rule them, and number 2, their place in the solar cycle. That is, that increase and decrease of light that we talk about over the course of a solar year. So that means the sun and the solar cycle define the zodiac, yes? In fact, Adam Ellenboss, one of the few astrologers I follow, he said it best. He said, it's the unchanging rhythm of the solstices and equinoxes that define the zodiac. You see, This symbolism implicit in the alternation between light and dark is fundamental to astrology. In fact, this increase and decrease of light, I would argue, is the most fundamental aspect of astrology or concept in astrology. Much of Capricorn symbolism comes from the fact that it is ruled by Saturn and begins with the winter solstice. But why was Saturn assigned rulership over Capricorn? This is a fun question, yes. Well, as we said, the sun defines the zodiac, right? And the sun determined the rulership scheme, yes. This is exemplified for us in the Thema Mundi, right? Which is the hypothetical birth chart for the cosmos. Now, I don't have it here, but let's make our own. All we have to do is put Cancer rising and just imagine the rulership of the planets, you see? So, Saturn, pardon, as we said, right, the sun determined the rulership scheme, right? And this is exemplified for us in the Thema Mundi, because the luminaries, that is, the sun and the moon, the lights, were assigned to the two hottest and brightest months of the year, Leo, right, and Capricorn, or sorry, Leo and Cancer, respectively. And yes, this symbolism comes from the northern hemisphere, okay? Where 90% of humans live. So to my Aussie and Kiwi friends, put a sock in it, okay, sweethearts? It's funny how my South American and my African friends never seem to get worked up about this. Okay. Anyway. Meanwhile, Saturn was the furthest visible object, the slowest, the coldest, and was then assigned rulership over the opposite signs, which are Capricorn and Aquarius. You may notice some of Saturn's significations embodied in both signs, but in particular in Capricorn. Saturn is the ruler of death, delays, isolation, confinement, exile, tradition, structure, and hard work. It rules the dark and the cold, yes, because it was the furthest visible object. And we may know Capricorn for its, coldness, right? Or seeming unemotional. It's the sign of the moon's detriment, isn't it? Meaning she can't comfortably express her emotional nature there. We also know Capricorn is a sign of labor and achievement, right? You see that Saturn working through a cardinal sign. Cardinal signs start things. And an earth sign. Earth signs manifest things, as opposed to air signs, which just talk about them, right? No offense to any of us fellow air signs. But anyway, the fact that Capricorn is a feminine sign indicates that it's more inward focused and introspective, as opposed to Aquarius, which is Saturn turned outward. That is, trying to change the world, or at least tell everyone else to change it. But Capricorn is Saturn turned inwards. And this implies a whole different kind of achievement. But we'll get to that in just a bit, okay? Now, we mentioned that Capricorn gets a lot of its symbolism from the fact that it occurs at the winter solstice. But how? Why? Well, we already said that the sun and the solar cycle define the zodiac astronomically, but they also imbue it with meaning. You see, the annual journey of the sun represents the life of the sun god. He's born in Aries, reaches maturity in Cancer, faces judgment or decision in Libra, and then occultly dies in Capricorn, before an eventual resurrection once again as we approach Aries. There are multiple gods from various traditions who died and were reborn. Yes? For example, my mama Inanna. Oh, mommy. She's the original Venus from ancient Sumer. She descended into the underworld in order to be stripped of her power so that she could rise again. Yes, she had to die in order to ascend. It's just like the Barbie movie, you know. Anyway, it's a whole other thing. And then there was Heracles, right? The Greek demigod and hero who had to die before he was granted his birthright of immortality by his father Zeus, right? And then there was Osiris, right? One of the primary gods of Egypt, who was murdered by his brother Set and resurrected by his wife, Isis. And he became Lord, right? And judge of the dead and the underworld, right? This sounds sort of reminiscent of Jesus Christ, you know, who is said to have ascended into heaven, where he would judge the living and the dead. Yes. Of course, the Christ myth is probably the most famous example of this. Jesus was known as the Son, right? The Son of God, but also, similar to the sun, the light of the world. Yes. But why are any of these characters important to us? Did any of them actually exist? Well, that really doesn't matter, does it? Because I would argue these stories are allegories for initiation. What, pray tell, is initiation? I talk about this in other videos, but suffice it to say, it's the maturation of consciousness. You see, Western astrology is philosophically based on ancient traditions like Hermeticism, Platonism, right? And some of these hold that the human soul left its source, like the prodigal son, became immersed in the world and in matter. Then realizing something was missing, begins the arduous journey back to its source in order to reunite or re-identify with it. Hence becoming immortal, right? That whole story of immortality. The sun rules perception and consciousness, and hence is emblematic of the soul in this context. I mean, what's the soul do? It makes you, you, right? What's consciousness do? Effectively the same thing, no? Anyway, we can think of initiation as consciousness unfolding progressively, more and more, to what already is. Things, how they exist as they are. The journey of the soul back to its source is illustrated for us in the mythical lives of these various gods. Well, what does this have to do with the winter solstice? It's rooted in the symbolism of light and dark, isn't it? Light in this context is emblematic of the soul, spirit, and consciousness, while dark, on the other hand, represents form, body, matter, that which is unconscious. It's nothing good or bad. It's light and dark, right? What is revealed and what is hidden. Immersion in matter, though, is considered death to the soul. When the prodigal son returns home, right, in that parable from the Gospels, if you're familiar with the parable of the prodigal son, right? As he's approaching, his father says to his other son, right, who's saying, like, why do we care about this dude, right? And the father says to him, you don't understand. My son was dead, and now he's alive again. You see? It's that same idea. So the winter solstice is that time of year when the nights are longest. Of course, in the northern hemisphere, yeah. And darkness dominates. It represents the place where the sun god occultly died. Right? Aries is the place of birth, the beginning of the zodiacal journey, while Cancer is the place of greatest light, the maturity, or symbolic of Christ and his ministry. But it's also the point where the sun begins its downward arc, right? Traveling southwards, and the light begins to decrease. Then comes Libra, the place of judgment and decision, where free choice is made to die and descend into hell, right? To redeem the spiritually dead. Jesus was even quoted as saying, "Let the dead bury the dead." There's meaning behind that. It's not literal. Finally, we come to Capricorn, the place of death, the crucifixion. Yes. The cross is even a symbol of matter, as seen in the astrological glyph for the earth, right? Imagine the final Sephiroth of the Kabbalistic tree of life, Malkuth, right? That's death to the soul. It's being stuffed. It's your furthest place from your source. You see, according to the stories, the sun god has to fully die or be fully immersed in matter in order to conquer and redeem it. Remember this ancient phrase, right? The sun stands still for 3 days. It's emblematic of the death of Christ, his body sealed in its tomb, which is allegorical also of initiation. In fact, Capricorn is the sign of initiation, esoterically. And in esoteric astrology. It is the mountaintop, right? The mountaintop where one beholds a wider view of existence. You see? Even Martin Luther King Jr., right? Famous Capricorn. He was quoted as saying, "I have been to the mountaintop." I think it was a reference to the mountaintop of initiation. Because what he did is something almost superhuman. Normal people don't live like that. Make that kind of influence and impact that he did. Now, the mountaintop, or the place of death and sacrifice. We don't necessarily mean literal death, right? St. Paul said, "I die daily." And he wasn't talking physically, but referencing who he was before. He's dying to who he was the previous day, as he understood himself, because more has been revealed. Again, initiation. We can see the immersion in the greatest darkness, that is, being furthest from the light of our source, spirit, right? And this distance or immersion in matter is best exemplified in Christ's words, "Father, why hast thou forsaken me?" Right? This is apparently, a divine being that feels like they were forsaken by their source. It's the darkest point, right? He then dies, Christ, and the sun stands still for 3 days, right? Emblematic of the tomb. And then he descends into hell, per the myth, right? Before ascending into heaven again, he descended into hell to redeem, right? To redeem it and those who were placed there. It's emblematic again of the redemption of matter, the redemption of our personalities, our personal selves. And then ascended into heaven, right? Cancer, to judge the living and the dead. You see, it's at this moment, the greatest darkness, where we also find the greatest opportunity. It's when the light begins to increase. The sun once again begins its journey, moving northwards towards his resurrection in Aries. And doesn't it seem fitting that we celebrate Easter, right, around that time? So what's the lesson of Capricorn here? The lesson of Capricorn is letting go. Very Saturnian, isn't it? You've heard the old adage, right? You can't take anything with you when you die. The same is true of initiation. It's not about anything new. It's about removing more of what isn't real. Christ alludes to this when he says, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, right? He didn't mean physical wealth, although you can't take that with you either, right? Attachment to that can be part of it. But he meant that you can't take all your personal stuff, your baggage, or your identifications, the things, the conditions you've acquired in life that we take to be ourselves. For example, I'm I'm Frankie, I'm Saturn girl, I'm a parent, I'm trans, right? I'm a Mason, I'm an astrologer. All these things die with my body. But what persists, if anything? That's what the point of all this is. In Vedic astrology, Capricorn is the sacred Makara, right? The crocodile-like creature who is the wrathful guardian of temples and holy places, of sanctuaries. What's the holy place here? You! You are the holy place. I was once told that before you can tread the path yourself, you have to become the path yourself. Or rather, before you can tread the path, you have to become the path yourself. Why is that? Because you are the journey you're on. You are the adventure you're having, right? You are the object of your search and the means of that search, right? This all sounds like, nonsense and absolutely bonkers until you feel it out for yourself. Well, anyway, Capricorn has an esoteric mantra associated with it as well. It is lost in my, and light supernal, but on that light I turn my back. What does that mean? We think of Capricorn as achievement, right? But this statement is suggesting something deeper. Spiritual achievement. The fulfillment of Saturn, right? Remember, Capricorn is Saturn turned inward. The fulfillment of Saturn turned inward is spiritual achievement. That is, being immersed or lost in the supernal or greatest light. But on that light, I turn my back. Yes? Because bit by bit, everything is stripped away. Just like my mama Inanna, right? Everything had to be stripped away from her, all of her powers, before she was able to be raised up once again. Turning our backs on the light of spirit is symbolic of service, of giving up a great reward or achievement for service to the whole and dispensing that light of realization to humanity. And how do we do that? By living as a demonstration of those realizations. If we're not living what we've realized, then it's not worth anything. It's worthless if it's just ideas in your head. But why should we take any of this as allegorical of our situation? Well, because that's the whole point of astrology. It's a tool for self-development. We can look at our charts for sex and money. I mean, I love those things more than anyone, right? But the point of understanding our charts is to understand ourselves. So this solstice, I implore you to recall the special significance that it has in the religious and esoteric traditions of the world. Our ancient Mesopotamian ancestors believed that earth and sky were interconnected, that movements in the sky indicated events on earth and vice versa. You see, the modern magical work, in essence, is about synchronizing our work on earth with the greater ritual in the heavens, yes? As one of my mentors once said. You can see for yourself how many ancient monuments were oriented to the winter solstice, and for good reason. We have Stonehenge in the UK, Newgrange in Ireland, Karnak in Brittany, France, and then Chichen Itza in Mexico, and then the Egyptian Karnak, right? Karnak in Egypt, just to name a few. According to some historians, these were most likely religious sites, and hence places of initiation. Just as the houses in astrology are said to anchor the energies of the heavenly zodiac in our terrestrial realm, so too are we, analogically, like an anchor for God, or the divine, or the universe, or spaghetti monster, or whatever you want to say. It doesn't matter. On this planet, we are an anchor, right? May thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We wouldn't ask for someone's will to be done on earth if it was already done, would we? Well, anyway, it is our dharma, our duty, to shape the world in the image of love and compassion, according to the plan of the universal mind as best we understand it. For as Christ said, the works that I do, you shall also do, and greater works than these shall you do, because I go to the Father. Reuniting with the source. Yes. The Father is spirit. The Son, right, or the Son, or soul, emblematic of the soul. That fragment that's pervaded by the source. The solar consciousness is a piece of that spirit, right, that lives within us as the inner ruler immortal. Theoretically, I suppose, for some people. These works, or our service, right, these are an effect of spirit progressively working through a form, a body, that is able to express it. So your job, if you choose to accept it, is to live as an example of how you think people should relate to each other. Well, I hope this was interesting to you. Thank you for watching till the end. Please like, subscribe, and click the bell, and also comment. I do wonderful videos, so check out my other ones. I have great content. It's educational, and I'm pretty cute and fun. So I also do the best readings. It's science. All my contact information is below. You can also visit my website to book through there, frankielynch.com. But most importantly, I love you. You're beautiful. And have a spectacular, whatever it is you're having.